Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. And I can't believe it's 2 years since the World Athletics Championships in Budapest. The next version of this starts this weekend in Tokyo, and who better to speak to than Sean Falconer. Sean, welcome to the program. Thanks again for your time. Nice to have you back on the show.
Oh, great to be joining you again. It's been a while since we chatted.
It sure has. And we'll chat all about what's been going on. But most importantly, World Athletics Championships in Tokyo. And I'm sure the organizers are absolutely delighted because the last time they had a major event there, it was COVID and the stadiums were empty.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. So, I mean, the World Champs kick off in a couple of days' time. It's from the 13th to the 21st, as you mentioned, Tokyo. And we're sitting with a similar problem we had with the Olympics a couple of years ago, where the organizers, or at least the athletics world body, are saying, be careful of the heat. I mean, apparently they had a 33-degree temperature just the other day. So the middle distance and longer distance athletes may have to be very wary of that. The sprinters, not so much. But yeah, I mean, at least they'll have good weather.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much the same in Budapest 2 years ago. I mean, we had the similar scenario. It was the end of August then. And there was also these incredibly hot conditions that greeted the athletes.
I actually think that the problem is not so much the weather's warm. It's that a lot of athletes come from areas that are cooler. For South Africans, if you say, well, the weather's going to be 33 Celsius, we go, well, that's just a normal summer's day for us. But a lot of European nations might be thinking that's a heat wave and their poor athletes are going to collapse with heat exhaustion. So I think it depends on where you come from. So there's 2,000 plus athletes from 200 different countries, or plus 200 countries. So I'm sure there's some athletes who think this is quite nice.
So obviously you mentioned middle and longer distances. It'll suit the East Africans down to the ground, 30 odd degrees. I mean, that's a winter's day for them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's face it, the Kenyans, the Ethiopians, and the Eritreans have dominated, and Moroccans, and have dominated the middle distances and long distances for so many years in world athletics. So, yes, I would imagine most of them are thinking the heat is not the problem. It's I'm sorry to put a cynical note in here, but the Kenyans, after so many years of dominance, have also got a huge doping issue in amongst their athletes at the moment. So, yeah, there's different things to look at when it comes to world athletics these days.
So host city is Tokyo, the Japanese National Stadium. It was built for the Tokyo Olympics in 2020. It'll hold almost 70,000 people. I don't think they're going to have a problem filling it.
No, I don't think so. As you mentioned earlier, the previous time that the stadium was used is we were coming out of COVID, or I'm not even sure we were out of COVID properly yet. I don't really remember. It feels like a different lifetime already. But yes, there were strict protocols in place, and the Olympics had been delayed by a year, and they were still affected by COVID protocols and things like that. So this will be different. And the Japanese have traditionally been very keen on athletics, and their athletes tend to do quite well as well. That home ground advantage might play in their hands. They've got some good distance runners and some good sprinters, and yeah, I think the people will come out in numbers.
Am I right in saying outside of the Olympics, this is by far the biggest athletics event that is on the calendar?
I would say yes, in terms of it being a global meet where different countries compete against each other. But you're not comparing apples with apples, because on the World Athletics calendar, you've got the Diamond League meets, which really are massive. It's just obviously not quite the same level and quite the same, again, apples and oranges. So, but yes, outside of Olympics, this is the big one. The sad thing is that for the sprints and the throws, this is the next big one. But for the long distance athletes, specifically the marathoners, the World Champs is not really seen as a place that you really want to go to. They'd rather save their legs for one of the big city marathons and a bigger payday. So yeah, there's pros and cons to the World Champs.
For those who are not 100% au fait with the difference between a Diamond League meet and this meet, obviously in a Diamond League meet, you don't run heats and you kind of are invited, as most of the top athletes in the world would be. Here, you could be disqualified in a heat. Anything could happen, and you've got to be on form over a number of days in a lot of the events.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Olympics and World Champs, because you've got so many countries and so many athletes from all these different countries taking part, you obviously have to get to the final first, as opposed to being invited because you're in form and you're a big name and a draw card for the crowds. So the athletes have to go there planning to run 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 events just to get to a final. And on top of that, some of these athletes will be doubling up and running in more than one event. For example, the top sprinters will do the 100 and the 200, and some of those athletes will then also take part in the 4x100 relay. Similarly, you've got your 400 meter or your 400 meter hurdles athletes who might be penciled in to run in the 4x400 mixed relays or 4x400 men's or women's relays. So some of these athletes are going to be running multiple events in the space of about approximately a week. And that also takes a lot of planning, a lot of logistics, a lot of training and nutritional and rest. It's a tough call for anybody. And anybody who does well at that kind of level deserves kudos.
Before we talk about the international athletes, and I don't mean that with any disrespect to the locals, to the South Africans, the 49-member South African team, 32 men, 17 women, and we got 8 national record holders who are going, and 1 or 2 who could really upstage their opponents, for lack of a better word, and bring home a gold?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, I think a lot of people will be looking at athletes who have now medaled on the world stage. Ioane du Plessis in the javelin, she got the silver medal at the Paris Olympics last year. You got Prudence Sekgodiso in the women's 800 meters, who won that gold medal at the World Indoor Champs earlier this year. Oh, and just to add that Prudence has been doing very, very well on the Diamond League and European circuit. The thing is that, first of all, a gold medal at the World Indoor Champs, which is traditionally at the beginning of the global calendar season, which means that a lot of the European athletes haven't even really started racing yet. They're still in pre-season coming out of winter. And winning a gold medal at World Indoor Champs is by no means any kind of a guarantee that you can go on to win a gold medal at the World Outdoor Champs. But that said, Prudence has been steadily improving the last couple of years. She made the final of the last Olympics, and there were already some pundits or some armchair fans in South Africa who were putting the pressure on her to go get a medal, and she ended up finishing last in that final. But I think just getting to that final was a huge step in her career. She then slingshotted from that onto that World Indoor Champs gold. And is she a chance of a medal at the World Champs now? Absolutely. She could do it. But I also think that the people shouldn't put too much pressure on her. She must just go out there and do the best she can. Then, of course, we've got Akani Simbini. He got that silver medal at the Olympics last year as part of the relay team. And earlier this year, he won bronze in the 60-meter dash at the World Indoor Champs. He's coming into some really good form. He was second in his last race in the Diamond League just the other day with another sub-10. I mean, I've lost count of how many sub-10s he's run in his career. So, you've got the usual suspects that are there that could upset. They could take a medal. And wouldn't it be great? Because I think it's 8 years since we last won a World Champs medal.
And that, of course, wait for Nikak and his athletics career, thanks to a bit of touch rugby at the old hallowed grounds of Newlands down the road from where I am. Basically, I won't say ended his career, but put a bit of a damper on it. Now he's running the 200 meters, not the 400.
Yeah, Wade has done this over the years. I mean, when you consider how talented he is, the fact that he's got a sub-10 second in the 100 meters, a sub-20 in the 200, and of course that Olympic world record and world champs winning all those feats, in the 400 meters. He is one of the most versatile athletes we've ever produced. But yes, that knee injury really did put the brakes on his career. Some will argue he's never been the same athlete and he's never quite reached the heights that he could have or should have or would have. Who knows? He's also one of the elder statesmen of the SA team now. So good for him that still being there, still competing. And of course, he'll also be available for the 4x400 relay team. And speaking of relay teams, that's where the big excitement for the South Africans is potentially going to be. We have really made a statement in the recent times. Our men's 4x100 took silver at the Paris Games last year. And that finally gave Akani his global level medal that we all hoped he would get. And then they took the gold at the World Relay Champs earlier this year in China in May. At that same meet, our men's 4x400 team took the gold medal and our women's 4x400 took the bronze medal. So in terms of the potential of medals, we do have some good teams there. Once again, you have to take into account the fact that the World Relay Champs are not a focal event for some countries. It's more a developmental step, or it's early in the season. Therefore, they're not at full speed. And therefore, winning a gold or podium positioning at the World Relay Champs is not a guarantee of World Champs success later in the year. But it sure does point to the fact that we have the potential. And if our athletes do well, get their changeovers right, we could bring medals home.
Now, that's obviously always the key. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in a relay race, and it's all down to how well you pass the baton and how you go around. But I guess the competition is going to come, as usual, from the Americans, the Jamaicans, and of course the Japanese have done brilliantly in the relays, and particularly in their own home backyard.
Yes, I think the Japanese relay teams will be super, super amped to try and do something on home soil. But yes, you do tend to see the usual suspects coming through the USA. I mean, in the 100 meters, they spoilt for choice, and I mean with Noah Lyles and Kidney Bednarak and athletes of that caliber, and of course the Jamaicans who have been there for the last few years. Although some will argue that some of their best female sprinters are either getting to the ends of their careers or have been injury plagued of late, and they're not quite the powerhouses they used to be. Japanese, the Germans. I mean, you can't rule out any country when it comes to a 4x100 relay team because those changeovers are so difficult to get right and something can go wrong with even the best team, and suddenly you're out of it. So it will be interesting. And then, of course, in terms of the so-called usual suspects on the stage, I mean, the women's 400-meter distance racing, whether it's the 400 hurdles or the 400 straight, with Sydney McLaughlin, Levroni, and Femke Bol and athletes of this caliber, and the pole vault with Armand Duplantis, and it just seems to rewrite the record books every time he jumps. The 100 and 200, you've got the big expected duel between America's Noah Lyles and Botswana's Letsile Tebogo. So there's so much to look forward to. I just can't wait for it all to kick off.
Now, if you were a betting man, the only person I guess that you would bet on to win his event is Mondo Duplantis. I mean, he is just, I don't know, what can I say, half a foot better than everybody else, if not even more.
Well, it's interesting. I watched one of his competitions just a month or so ago. I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't remember which meet it was. It may have been Diamond League, it may have been something else, but he actually missed a couple of jumps, and in the end, he won the competition comfortably. It was never in doubt. But to see him stutter at one or two lower heights was most unusual. And I think it was a healthy reminder that while he has dominated the sport for the last few years, and while he has broken his own world record multiple times, he is still human. And anybody can have an off day or make a mistake or misjudge the run up. So, maybe, just maybe, some of the other pole vaulters looked at going, if I do everything right on the day and he doesn't, who knows? Maybe I sneak a gold medal as opposed to, just pitch up and hope I get a silver or a bronze. So, hey, it keeps things interesting.
It's interesting the height that they're now jumping. It's 29. I mean, I remember I was actually live on air when Ockert Pritz jumped 6 meters at Stellenbosch at Kutzenberg. And that seems like a lifetime away. Yet now they're jumping, world record is 629. It's like 3 or 3.5 stories high over a balcony of a building.
But I think what people need to keep in mind is that while Mondo has steadily pushed it up past the late teens into the early 20s and now has got up to 629 height level, then the rest of the jumpers are still, for the majority of them, I say now, are still sort of aiming to get to that 6 meter mark. And when they do that, it's quite an achievement. So Mondo has kind of skewed things. I still think that jumping 6 is a huge achievement, and the number of athletes that have ever achieved that is still relatively small by comparison.
Yeah, and the progression has not been that quick. I mean, he does, and we all know that the extra centimeter can be worth 100 or 200 or even $500,000, depends on which meeting you go to. But isn't it amazing how this particular event had like the Sergei Bubka of the world, who was like so dominant for so many years, and now Armand Duplantis is like so dominant. It's almost as that there is everybody jumping for second, third, and fourth.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that the pole vault is such an intricately technical event. The sprints, it comes down to muscle power and fast twitch muscle fibers and that kind of stuff. And there's a whole host of athletes on a similar level, and that's why the races tend to be close. A couple of years ago, you had Usain Bolt, who seemed to be running away from everybody. Nowadays, it's a lot closer. So it's not unusual to have an outlier in a specific event. But pole vault, you can have an outlier who's got the physical ability to stand head and shoulders above the rest of the field and has the technical ability to go with it. And as a result, seems uncatchable or unbeatable. So, you can argue that Mondo Duplantis is a freak. And once he retires, and of course, he's still so young, he's nowhere near retirement. But sure, once he does retire, will we then see a much closer competition and a more of a rotation amongst the athletes in terms of medal positions? It's possible. But in the meantime, I just love watching him jump because the excitement every time he starts his run up, and then of course when he does his somersaults when he breaks the record for the umpteenth time, it's fantastic television.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that you and I are chatting about it, and an event which, with respect to the majority of athletes, would not be able to do. And I think that's really the intrigue about it, how intrigued we are about how somebody with a pole can jump, even, as you say, just get over 6 meters is quite remarkable.
Look, we've seen incredible development in the sport through the ages. If you look at the high jump, for example, the way the athletes used to do the forward kick jump over with like a scissor jump with the legs, and
Yeah,
then along came Fosbury and
yeah,
invented the Fosbury flop. I think it was Dick Fosbury. I think his first name was, if my
yes,
memory serves. And suddenly, high jump went to a whole different level, if you'll excuse the pun. And so, sooner or later, someone's going to come up with some innovation that changes the pole vault as well. Maybe they'll bring a much, much longer pole with much more kick, and suddenly the jumpers will be going over 7 meters. Who knows?
yeah.
20, 30 years from now, if you and I are still around and having these chats, we might be talking about, don't you remember the primitive old
Yeah.
days of Mondo Duplantis?
Yeah, you talk about puns. I mean, a flop. If anything, the Fosbury flop ain't no flop. Right, let's talk about the
No.
marathon, an event that I know you are very keen to always watch and be involved in. We've flattered receive in terms of South African participation in the marathon over the years, even though we do so brilliantly well in ultras and even things like Comrades and Two Oceans Marathon. Elroy Gallant, our men's marathoner, is there. Who else can we look out for?
I have to be honest, I haven't looked at the actual field of the marathon yet, so I'm unable to tell you who the favorites would be. What I can comment on is the fact that Elroy is the only South African who's going to be running in the marathon at World Champs. There were, I think, five other athletes, if my memory serves, who qualified to go, but all turned down selection for various reasons. And I read an opinion piece the other day that said no one can really blame them for doing so, and it's my own opinion as well. The World Champs Marathon, I mentioned it earlier in this interview. It's a bit of a, I don't want to say it's a non-event. That's completely unfair, but the Olympic marathon is on a much higher level, and then of course you've got the big city marathons, and
Yeah.
as a result, some of the marathon athletes from various countries look at the World Champs Marathon as a nice to have, or it's an opportunity for some young, up and coming, emerging talent to go and make a name for themselves. Whereas the more established marathon athletes would rather run the big city marathons because it's a much bigger payday. It's there's more television coverage. The sponsors are more keen to have them at those races than World Champs. And of course, by sponsorships, you're not just talking about the shoes they run in, but also their apparel sponsors. Because at World Champs, you're running in your national colors. Whereas the big city marathon, you get to run in your Adidas, Nike, Puma, New Balance, or
Yeah.
whatever else sponsor you have. And of course, that's your payday. So no one can blame athletes who are professionals for wanting to go to a different event because it means more for their careers and their bank balances. So kudos to Elroy Gallant for going to the World Champs. I mean, he broke that SA record not so long ago, ran that 2:05:36. So, it took years for a male athlete to finally beat Gervas's record. And Elroy really has done well for himself on the world stage. He was 11th at the Olympics last year, our best finisher in the men's race. And, could he make the top 10 in Tokyo? Yes. Could he podium? Absolutely. It's possible if he has a brilliant race and other athletes are running at the run about the same pace as him. He's not a 2:01, 2:02 marathoner as yet, perhaps, maybe never. Who knows?
Yeah.
He's getting to the age where he's starting to mature as a marathon athlete, and he could go still faster. So everything's up for grabs. Also, we talked about the heat in Tokyo. Maybe he adapts better to the heat conditions, and other athletes don't. So, I say go for it.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster. Show us what you can do.
And generally, it's more a tactical race when it comes to a medal like this than it is a fast race.
Yeah, that often happens at World Champs and Olympics in terms of the longer distances, as opposed to just sheer speed and put your foot down and go for it. The 10,000 meters and the marathon races often become more tactical, more cagey. The athletes tend to stick together a bit more, and as a result, if one athlete decides to go out hard from the start and no one goes with them, It's almost like a cycling analogy, like the Tour de France, where you've
Yeah.
got the breakaways, and do the peloton chase, or do they hope that that person will come back to them? So, anything can happen on the day, and let's see what happens.
Faith Kipyegon, what a CV she has going into these world champs. Another gold medal on the cards for her.
Yeah, it's hard to think that anybody can beat her. Once again, I always put the disclaimer as somebody who follows the sport. The disclaimer is always going to be that there are no guarantees, and you can be a world champion, an Olympic champion, a world record holder, and things just don't go your way on the day. Or you can race multiple events, and where you're expected to win all three or all two, you could have an off day in the one and bounce back and win a gold in the other. I mean, just look at Sifan Hassan. She did that at Olympics. Everybody was saying she was going for a triple medal attempt, and things didn't quite go to plan in one or two of the events, and she had to settle for a lower position. But so Faith is just, she's like Mondo Duplantis. She has dominated in recent years, multiple gold medals, multiple world records across multiple distances. And it comes down to, is she hungry enough to carry on fighting for it? Are the other athletes getting hungrier and working that much harder to try and beat her? It makes for wonderful viewing.
Last but not least, the event that everybody wakes up, and we're going to have to wake up. Well, maybe not necessarily wake up, because if it's in the evening session, it's sort of more comparable to our hours. But Noah Lyles, a phenomenon, but not a Usain Bolt.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier that Usain was that outlier where he seemed to be running away from the other athletes in the races. And as a result, there was clear daylight between him and the second and third place athletes in several races over the years. Later in his career, they started getting a bit closer. He had to actually fight all the way and dip for the line. Noah, not quite as dominant, but definitely has the talent to be the world champ. I am not a fan of the American sprinters in particular. It's not just them, but the American sprinters in particular, with the sort of the brashness and the trash talking and the in your face kind of mannerisms they have. And Noah, a lot of people accused him of being arrogant at the Olympics because he seemed to sort of come bursting out onto the stage almost as if the champ is here. All I have to do is run now, so get out of my way. And then he didn't win. So, maybe a bit of humble pie every now and again is good for these athletes and makes them that much hungrier, that much more determined or more focused. And perhaps he'll prove me wrong and absolutely dominate in Tokyo. On the other hand, there's other sprinters that might want to give him a run for his money. So let's see what happens.
Lastly, but not least, what would be a successful World Athletics Championships in terms of medals and results for South Africa?
Considering the fact that it's 8 years since our last World Champs medal, and considering the fact that in the 2016-2017 period where we won multiple Olympic and World Champs medals thanks to several athletes, at the moment, the cynic in me is saying that just one medal would be a success story for us. But then that's looking at just World Champs, and it's 8 years since our last medal. If you look at the last Olympics and you look at the last World Relay Champs where we got several medals, now the expectations are higher. So I hate putting pressure on South African athletes in the sense of we expect medals, and I hate it when our athletics officials, or even worse, politicians, place pressure on our athletes to bring back medals as if it's expected, versus go out there, do your best, and if you do win medals, we will be the first people to celebrate with you. But yes, the fan in me is really hoping our 4x400 relay team brings back a medal. Our 4x100 brings back a medal. Akani, it would be fantastic if he could win an individual medal on that stage. Prudence, oh man, if Prudence does it, it would just be that sort of that arc of carrying on, and we would be ecstatic. And of course, UNA in the javelin, she was second in a Diamond League meeting just the other day as well. So that silver medal in Paris, could she do it again? Absolutely. So I don't want to say that there's a specific target that would be this is successful or not, as opposed to, as a patriotic South African fan of and lover of this sport, I'm just going to be shouting for every single South African, and every single time one of them medals, I will be running around the lounge doing the leap of joy.
And we will be chatting to you after the World Athletics Championships to see how high that leap of joy was. I guess it wouldn't be as high as 6 meters 29. Sean, it's always great chatting to you. We will catch up with you after the World Athletics Championships. And as always, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Louis. Keep well.
That's tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. World Athletics Championships gets underway on Saturday. A contingent of South Africans and the best athletes in the world gathering in Tokyo. We will keep you up to date with results from the World Athletics Championships in the next couple of weeks as we bring you more action and more interviews on From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. As always, be nice to each other. Until next time, bye for now.